Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a kind of inspired video. I was reading an article, which a lot of this information is going to be based around from a site I'm sure a lot of us follow called Ultimate Classic Rock. You see it a lot on social media. They have an email list. Great site if you don't know it. It's kind of like a free version of Rolling Stone. It's actually about music and not about random, you know, things that Rolling Stone likes to talk about. But there's an interesting article published November the 19th, 2024, and it was titled Will Bob Dylan Tour Again? Or Will Bob Dylan Continue on Tour? Um, it struck me because this is a conversation that I've had with a couple of friends of mine that are big Dylan fans. Now, obviously, those of you that know, Bob Dylan is very famous for a unofficial thing called the Never Ending Tour, which started kind of in the late 80s unofficially, where essentially Bob was touring whether he had music out or not every single year. Obviously, essentially, it was put on hold during the COVID pandemic, so there was technically a year that halted the tour. Dylan has never really jumped onto that title as you would expect. He's not somebody that wants to be boxed in with a title. And actually, kind of says, that there were other tours in the Neverending Tour. He made up names that weren't real tours, but it was a very Bob Dylan answer. But Dylan just recently concluded a tour that started in 2021. It just ended um, on November the 14th at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And that tour actually did have a name. It was called the Rough and Rowdy Ways Tour, obviously in reference to his most recent album, Rough and Rowdy Ways from 2021. And again, the question that's come up with friends, that's come up with this article is that, Dylan is 83. Um, as far as we know, he's in as good of health as can be expected for somebody that's 83. He's not, you know, tied down to a wheelchair. He's not, on oxygen or anything like that. It's not like, Phil Collins on that last Genesis tour, who was only in his early 70s, very much, limited to a chair on stage and he can't drum. Dylan is still playing piano, harmonica, occasional guitar, not much guitar, but he hasn't really been doing that since, 2008, 2009 or so. um, and the fascinating thing that I've discussed with my friends is that this tour had a set end date on it, which was 2024. I got to see Dylan three times on this tour, twice last year, and then once in 2022, maybe. Um, so I got to see this tour three times. It was give or take a song or two, pretty much the same show every time. He did the entire Rough and Rowdy Ways album with the exception of Murder Most Foul, which was the closing track, a second disc. It was like a 16 and a half minute song. It was probably just too cumbersome, and he probably thought it would be too boring for people to hear it. Because so many of those songs from the album are longer, 6+ minute songs. So Dylan's tour concluded Royal Albert Hall. He did tons of dates. He even kind of took a side trek by playing on the Outlaw Festival with Willie Nelson. And essentially what that is Willie Nelson going on tour, but keeping kind of a festival atmosphere to it by, bringing in big names to kind of accompany him because Willie Nelson is also somebody in advanced age. He's 91 and is not in great, you know, physical shape in terms of walking around. He still can walk, but he's 91 years old. So on the most recent Outlaw tour, he had his son Lucas was playing with him. John Mellencamp played a bunch of shows. Robert Plant and Alison Krauss played a bunch of shows, and Bob Dylan. And on those dates, Dylan did switch up his set list. It was interesting because he had been pretty much sticking to the same set list on his Rough and Rowdy Ways tour, but this was almost like this isn't my tour. this is the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour. This is Willie Nelson's thing. So I mean, he threw out songs that he hasn't been playing in a while. He played a bunch of covers, like I think like Little Queenie by Chuck Berry and some old blues songs and things like that. In addition to, um, his songs, a lot of which were older songs, not newer songs. Um, and then he promptly went back to the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour, did a couple of adjustments, and again, kind of stuck to those adjustments up until the end. I mean, he played 3 nights at the Albert Hall, um, pretty much sticking to the same set list every time. And what was cool though throughout this tour is that he had several different musicians come and go in his band. He had his ever present Tony Garnier on the bass guitar and stand up bass, but for a while he was playing with a drummer named Jerry Pentecost, who had played with Old Crow Medicine Show for about 3 years, recorded a couple of records with them, and is a multi-talented guy. You'll see him usually in the house band for the Americana Awards at the Ryman Auditorium. Very, very talented guy. And most recently, simply since the Outlaw Tour, he's been playing with his old friend Jim Keltner, who you'll know from, playing with Dylan in the 70s and 80s. He played with the Traveling Wilburys, played with George Harrison. He's really, I mean, all those hit records in the 70s, Leon Russell, he's played with everybody. And he himself is 80 or 81. So Dylan, was able to switch up his band almost more than his set list on this tour. But anyway, that brings me back to the point. Will Dylan continue the tour? I don't think that Dylan plans to stop being active. I know that there's actually a statement out that Dylan is going to be doing a duet, a song with Barbra Streisand on a Barbra Streisand duets album, a new song. I can imagine it would be like an old standard, because Dylan put out those 3 Sinatra records in the mid 2000s. But anyway, this is what Ultimate Classic Rock said. So I'm going to pull a little bit, and just kind of give you a couple of points that they have made. Again, they state, Rough and Rowdy Ways tour started November 21. They say at that time the promotional material for the tour billed it as worldwide and as lasting until 2024, which is obviously just concluded. The other thing, Dylan, during that time of touring, played, and I did a video on this last year. He played at Farm Aid, again, Willie Nelson's big festival, as a guest, a surprise guest. Played several songs, all old songs, but he played with essentially Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs, and then they added Benmont Tench from the Heartbreakers. So you had 2 original Heartbreakers with Mike Campbell and Benmont Tench, as well as Steve Ferrone, who was a later day member of the Heartbreakers up until Tom Petty's passing, and is now a current member of the Dirty Knobs with Mike Campbell. And Dylan played guitar. And that was a very interesting thing to watch. I thought it was the most exciting thing that Dylan has ever done in my lifetime, to play with the Heartbreakers. So he's still classic Dylan, being, unfettered by what the media wants him to be. Let me see here. Bob Dylan's also been very interesting. If you're following along with Bob Dylan, he's been tweeting essentially, and the reports also show that it's actually Bob Dylan doing these tweets himself. It's not his media. I mean, it's not his marketing manager or social media manager. It's Dylan posting random things about, sports and random places he wants to go eat in New Orleans and just crazy stuff. He posted about Bob Newhart passing away, and it was like 2 months past when Bob Newhart actually passed away. So again, Dylan's not doing interviews about this like normal. There's obviously a lot of hype around Bob Dylan with the new biopic coming out on Christmas Day with Timothée Chalamet, called A Complete Unknown, which is kind of it's an authorized biopic, but not necessarily a truthful one in the true Bob Dylan style. So it's going to be interesting to see that, to see how they kind of portray Dylan in that regard. Let me see. Yeah, there's been talk. Somebody interviewed his son Jakob Dylan, who's the lead singer, frontman of the Wallflowers, 90s kind of alternative rock band. And Jacob was essentially saying, he doesn't know why his dad is tweeting. The reporter asked Jacob if he would play with Bob ever, and Jacob was like, "My dad has my information. He can contact me anytime." So I don't know what kind of separation there is there. Um, it's hard to see. Um, yeah, I guess in uh, yeah, I guess yeah. Okay, so one of the things that they mentioned was Dylan had a interview in 2022 with the Wall Street Journal where that he was asked about his touring career. He didn't really say yes or no to anything. Like, he didn't say, "Yeah, I'm done by the end of this Rough and Rowdy Ways tour," or maybe by the time I'm 85. I don't know. Um, so, um, yeah, he said the reason you do it in touring, the reason you do it is the reason you do it is because it's a perfect way to stay anonymous and still be a member of the social order. You're the master of your fate. You manipulate reality and move through time and space with the proper attitude. It's not an easy path to take, not fun and games. It's no Disney World. It's an open space with concrete pillars and an iron floor, with obligations and sacrifices. It's a path, and destiny put some of us on that path. It's a path, and destiny put some of us on that path, in that position. It's not for everybody. So, again, I, like everybody, don't know what the future holds. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, but if you think this is it for Dylan, touring again, he still sounds good. I think he's quit smoking, so like that's making his voice sound clearer. The last couple of times I've seen him have been some of the best shows that I've seen. Um, and he's obviously still willing to work with artists, with Barbra Streisand, and that sort of thing. um, I know that there were rumors that Tony Garnier was leaving his band. Again, he's been with him for a long time. Longtime guitarist Charlie Sexton, who has his own career, he left Bob Dylan's band and joined Elvis Costello on his latest tour. So again, that was a big figure in Bob's life to kind of to leave the Dylan camp. But all those guys remain silent. I mean, you don't hear any of those guys talking about Bob backstage. I'm sure that that's stuff we're going to hear when Dylan passes away, hopefully, which is not for many, many years. But I think once he passes, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be more willing to talk about Bob and what the future, or not the future, but more people willing to share what they heard backstage, more people to understand, this is why Dylan was the way that he was. And we may never know. Hope some of us might not want to know. We kind of like, secretive Bob. But anyway, all that to say, I hope Bob continues to tour. I would love to see him again. There are obviously hundreds of songs that I would love to hear him play live that I've never heard. Um, I've never seen Bob play guitar. I would love at least once to see him hold a guitar. Um, but if Bob says, Rough and Rowdy Ways is it, I kind of went out without any fanfare. I would come to accept it. I've seen Dylan 6 times, and every time was a treat in its own way. So if he tours again, I'll go see him. If he doesn't, I will hold on to those six shows that I was able to see for Bob. So anyway, let me know what y'all think about this. Let me know if you saw the article, and I'd love to discuss with you all in the comments. All right. In the meantime, y'all be good. Take care, and we'll talk to you in the next one. Bye now.